previous session, we were seeing how to handle few exceptions. So, what are different types of exceptions and how we handle that one? So, we were checking with the timeout exception. So, let's create for exception. We have seen yesterday for no such exception, right? So, now we'll see timeout exception. Let me add some timeout. Where driver dot manage dot timeouts dot. I'll give some page load time. I'll give 500 milliseconds. Okay, so this is the time unit that I'm giving. And now I'm trying to launch get of https colon www dot amazon.com. Okay. So now let's observe we are giving 500 milliseconds. That means half a second for this page to load. Okay. Now we will see. Let me run this program. See. So this is taking, so it is unable to open that URL in half a second. So that is the reason it is throwing timeout exception. So if you are facing some timeout exceptions, you need to look into the uh, weights, whatever you have specified. So as of now, I gave only half a second. That is why it is throwing this issue. So let me give 3 seconds. Okay, 3 seconds for the page to load and see. Okay. Now you didn't get any issue. So whenever you face timeout issue, you need to work on the weights. You need to either increase the wait time, or if even if you increase the wait time, you are not able to find it, then you need to check the locators. So whatever the locator you have used, you need to check that. So this is about the timeout exception. Let me change it to 5 seconds. This is how you handle a timeout exception. Whenever you get a timeout exception, this is how you need to handle. So whenever you get no such element exception, then you need to first check the locator. And even if the locator is fine, but still if it is not working, then you need to check the times. Okay, so this is how these are the two first steps that you need to do whenever you are facing these exceptions. Okay, the next one we have is uh, stale element reference exception that we will see how we can handle. New class. Okay, let me take this Gmail. Let me remove this one. And now in Gmail, let me try to locate a particular element. The ID is this one. Okay, so let me copy this. Web element WE is equal to driver dot find element by dot CSS selector. This is the CSS selector. Okay. Now, once after finding this element, okay, once after selecting this element, so we'll see whether the element is found or not. WE, the name attribute of the web element is WE dot get attribute of name. So this is for our confirmation if the web element is found or not. So web element, if it is found initially, that is fine. Now what we will do is I will manually try to refresh the face, refresh the page. Okay. System.out.println, manually reload the page here. Okay. For this, what I will do, I'll add a breakpoint, Google breakpoint. Okay. Once after reloading the page, I am trying to use the same web element, wd dot send keys of. I want to send these keys to this particular element. Now let's see at this point whether it is work. See the same web element to in order to check whether it is found or not. We are getting the attribute, name attribute, and printing it in the console. After that, I am trying to manually reload the page by adding a breakpoint here. I'll reload the page and I'll with the same web element. I am accessing with this one, send keys of ABC. Okay, so let's work on it. So I'll run this in debug mode. Okay, to show you what is tail element reference exception. So I'll debug this as Java application. Let's wait. Okay, Gmail is launched and it has been identified. The name attribute of web element is so and so. Now the execution got passed here. So what I'll do is I'll manually reload this page. So I'm reloading this page here. Okay, I reloaded this page and now I'll continue with this execution. So I'll press on this button here. So it has thrown an exception. What is the exception? Stale element reference exception. Stale element reference element is not attached to the page or document. So the whatever the element is there, it is not attached to the document. That means the ID which the driver has created, it has been modified. So that is the reason it is not working. So how you can fix this issue? How we can fix this issue? So we have so whenever you are coming across this type of exceptions, you need to use the try catch block, or the other way is you can use the throws. So these are the two ways that you can handle a particular exception. First, we will see try catch block. So try catch block is nothing but whenever you feel some code is throwing some exception. So here, this piece of code is throwing the exception, right? So when the execution comes to this point, then at this point only it is throwing some exception. So what I will do, whatever code which is throwing the exception, I'll put it in the try block. In try block, the suspected code will be kept. Okay. So I suspect that this piece of code is going to throw some exception. That is the reason I placed this in try block. So in catch block, so we know that some exception will be thrown by this try block. So what I do, I will catch here tail element reference exception key. I'm creating an object for it. Okay. So in try, so when this is trying to throw some exception, this block will catch that exception. This block will catch that exception. So I suspect that this piece of code will throw stale element reference exception. So I'm catching it here. I'm catching that exception here. So how I will handle it here is, so once we know that it is throwing a stale element reference exception, what is the alternative? We need to find that element again. So I will use the same piece of code here. I have to find that element WE, web element WE again, and use this send keys of ABC. So this is what we understood, right? Stale element means the ID is outdated. We need to locate that element again. Okay, so this is how you handle it. So a catch block, you will write the exception, you will catch the exception. So this is the object created for this class. Actually, this is a class. So stale element reference exception means it is a predefined class. So for that, we are creating an object E so that you can use it. How you can use it is if you want to print the exception which is thrown, you can print it like this. You can use the object E dot print stack trace. It is similar to system.out.println. Okay, so print stack trace means whatever is the exception message that we get in the output. So here we are getting some exception, right? So the details of this exception will be printed with this line. So line number 29 will print all the exception details in the output. Okay, print stack trace. Okay, once the exception is caught, we need to identify that element again, locate that element again, and we can do whatever action we want to do here. So you can write any number of catch blocks here. It is not mandatory that you can. So your suspected exception only will be caught. Sometimes other exceptions might also be caught. So now you can write any number of exceptions. Any number of exceptions you can write here. Take any number of catches you can write here. One try with any number of exceptions. So exception is a super class. So how the hierarchy will be is, so exception is a super class. Under this exception, you will have all these exception types like no such element exception, stale element in and element interrupted, so element is not clickable. So all these exceptions will come under the main exception class. So this is the super class for whatever. So exception is the super class for all the things. If you want to display what is that exception, you can use e dot print stack trace, or this is one way, or you can also check the like this system dot out dot println e dot get message. So these two things will do the same task. E dot print stack trace and e dot get message. It will do the same thing like printing the exception details in the output, but in a different format. Okay. So any number of catches you can write. Okay. After the catch is done, you have a block called finally. Okay. So you know that this piece is going to throw some exception. If exception is thrown, this catch blocks will catch that exception accordingly. So suppose if it is throwing other than stale element reference exception, if it is throwing stale element exception, this catch block will be executed. Other than stale element reference exception, this block will be executed. Okay, so that is how it will work. So in that way, you can write any number of catch blocks here. Accordingly, that particular catch block will be executed irrespective of exception, irrespective of any exception, and like irrespective of any catch block. If you want to execute the code system.out.println, this is finally block. See, if this piece of code, if it throws exception or if it doesn't throw any exception, but still this finally block will be executed. Finally block will be executed every time, irrespective of the exception got caught or exception is not caught. So irrespective of that, this finally block will be executed every time. Every time this exception will, this block finally block will be executed. Okay, so that is about the exceptions, try, catch, and finally blocks. Okay, this is try, catch, and finally. So now let's run this program. Debug in debug mode. Okay, so it identified that web element and we need to manually reload the page. I'm reloading this page here. Okay, I reloaded, and now let me run this program. So yes, it even though this exception is thrown, this exception we handled it. How we handled it? In using the try catch blocks. So in this try catch blocks, we are handling this one. Okay. So this will be caught here. E dot print stack trace, it printed the exception details. Okay, that is the reason we got this. Even though we got the exception, but still after that we printed this driver dot find element. Again, we find that element and we have sent the ABC keys. So that is why this ABC key ABC got printed over there. And now once it is done, finally this finally block will be executed. Finally block got executed and it printed this one. Okay. So if you don't want to print the print stack trace, you can simply use system.out.println e dot get message. Okay. You can use this one. So let me save and run it one more time. One second. I ran it in a normal mode. Let me run it in debug mode. See, it gave the details of the exception like this. Stale element reference exception got caught, but we handled it. So that is the reason the execution is not stopped here. If you don't use the try catch blocks here, whenever an exception is thrown, the execution will stop there itself. Execution will not continue. So if you want to continue, even though exception is caught, you handle it and you want to continue the execution, then we use the try catch blocks like this. This is how we handle an exception. Okay, clear all of you? So
Here,
is the
why we use the true catch blocks?
to catch that exception. So we don't want the execution to get stopped there when an exception is caught. So at this point, an exception is thrown, right? And it will stop the execution if you don't use this try catch blocks. So if you want to continue the execution, even if the exception is thrown, then we use this try catch blocks. So in this catch block, the appropriate uh, catch block, see, we know that this will throw stale element reference exception. So that is the reason in this catch block we wrote if you come across this exception, you execute this block. Okay. So in this block, we in this catch block, it will handle the stale element reference exception. How we are handling this? Whenever we get stale element reference exception, we try to locate that element again and do the action whatever we are doing, right? So this is how we handle stale element reference exception. If it is another kind of exception apart from stale element reference, that we can handle it in this catch block. Why we write the catch blocks is in order not to stop the execution. Whenever an exception is thrown, we do not want the execution to stop there itself. We want to continue the execution. So that is the reason we use try catch blocks. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is about the stale element reference exception. And now the next one is invalid element state or element not visible or element not selectable. I think we have seen this one for Amazon. Amazon, that is for element not interactable. So we'll see this for invalid element state. Just a minute. Okay. So for this, we'll take the example of Google only. Okay. Let me write the code. So then we will try to understand it. Okay. So in this Google page, what we are trying to do here is, um, okay. So this is the main Google page. What we want to do is we'll identify this element and we'll try to send keys. And after that, we try to click on this Google search button. Okay. That we will do. Inspect this element. So let me try to inspect. So for this element, the name is Q, right? I'll try to identify with this name attribute. Okay. For input tag, at the rate name is equal to Q. Okay. This is the one field. So I'll use the XPath to locate this particular element. Okay. Mm. And for this XPath, let me use the send keys. I'll send the keys ABC. Okay. Now let us, after sending the keys ABC, sorry, these are the ABC. After sending this keys ABC, we want to perform the click on this Google search. So what I'll do, I'll locate this element. For this element, the name is this one. I think with this name, you will get two values. Sorry, sorry, just a minute. So this is the class and this is the value. So I'll use this class. Okay, let me use the XPath. So in for input tag, the rate class is equal to this one. So with this class, you have two elements. This is first and this is second. So two things you have. I want the first one. So I want the value whose value is Google search or area hyphen label is equal to Google search. So I'll use and value attribute at the rate value attribute is equal to Google search. Okay. So even now you are getting two fields. This is the first one and that is the second one. So what I'll do, I'll use the parent class div. This div I'll use. So from parent, I'll try to navigate to child. Okay. So let me copy this. So even if you're using Google search also, you're getting two. So I don't want to use this value attribute. Now I'll use the parent class. Parent, from parent, I'll navigate to child. So the parent is div tag. Okay. For this div tag, at the rate class is equal to this one. See, now you have only one result. So this is the exact XPath for this Google search. I'll use this XPath. Let me copy it and we'll try to perform the click. So driver dot find element by dot XPath This is my X path and I want to perform the click operation on it. See what we are doing. First, we are locating this element and we are passing the keys. Once we pass the keys, the element which is hidden under this drop down, auto suggestions drop down, we are trying to perform a click operation. Okay, that is what we are going to do here. Let me run this program. Oh, it clicked. It clicked. It is not throwing any exception. Let me run it one more time. It okay. We'll do one thing. We'll do one thing. I'll just wait for a couple of seconds here. So driver dot okay, not this driver. I'll use thread dot sleep. Intentionally for intentionally waiting, we can use this thread dot sleep. Let me try with this. Okay, see, the other way of handling an exception, the other way of handling an exception is using throws, right? Try catch block we have seen, but using throws, how we can handle an exception is, so this thread dot sleep, it might throw some exception. It is already showing here. So unhandled exception type, interrupted exception. We are interrupting the execution, right? We are asking the driver to sleep. We are asking the driver to, we are interrupting the driver from executing the script. So it might throw some uninterrupted, when we are using this line, it might throw some interrupted exception. How we can handle, either you can use add throws declaration or you can surround this piece of code using the try catch. So I'll use the first method, add throws. So if you add throws, you can write here at the method declaration itself, saying that this method has a chance to throw the interrupted exception. This method has a chance to throw interrupted exception. If you can, so this is how you can handle an exception the other way. So beforehand, you are say specifying that this piece of this method has a chance of throwing this kind of exception. This is the second way we can do it. So let me run this program again. Now auto suggestions got displayed and you can see now some WebDriver exception, what it is, element click intercepted. You can observe here, click intercepted. So what it is saying, element, this element, whatever you are searching, is not clickable at this point. You cannot click at this point. Other element would receive the click and it gives some span tag or something. So this is click intercepted. You are not able to perform the click on this particular element. Why? Because some other element has overlapped on it. Some other element has overlapped on it. See, whenever you want to perform the click on the hidden element, this is the exception that it will throw. So you can handle this kind of exception. We have already seen this. You can handle it using the JavaScript executor. So JavaScript executor is one alternative, or otherwise you can just perform a click outside of this one. So anywhere on this page you can perform a click and then you can click on this. This is also one more way to handle. So if you do a click here, that auto suggestions box will disappear and driver will be able to find this particular web element. So that is also one option that you can use, or otherwise you can use JavaScript executor. So even if anything is overlapping the required element, the required web element, if it is getting overlapped by any other element, but still you can perform a click operation on it by using the JavaScript executor. So these are the two ways that you can use. So let me use the JavaScript executor. JavaScript executor G is equal to, okay, we have converted it. Now what we will do, okay, And we will perform this click operation using the JavaScript executor. J.execute query execute script of arguments of 0.8 and W is the web element. Okay, using JavaScript executor, we can perform the click operation. Let me run it again. See, even though that we got the drop down, that auto suggestions thing, but still we are able to perform the click operation using the JavaScript executor. Okay, so you can handle this element click intercepted or any element not visible. So all these kind of exceptions, you can handle it by using JavaScript executor. Okay, is it clear all of you? Any doubts till here?
Yeah.
So we'll see the next type of exception. This exception, element not interactable, we have seen yesterday, like you cannot perform the click on this particular element and you can perform the click on some other element. So in Amazon website for selecting the checkbox, we have already seen this type of exception. Okay. Uh, for invalid element state, I think we can give one more example. This also is coming as element not interactable only. This example also, whatever we have seen till now. So I'll change it to element not interactable. Let me rename the file. Okay. Now let's see for element not visible thing. Use this one. Okay. Let me try with one example. I'll use the same Google example only. Or Amazon. Let me try with Amazon. Okay. So here in Amazon. Hmm. So let me inspect, and this is to tab search text box. Let me locate and pass some keys to it. Driver dot find element. Driver. CSS selector. This is the one dot send keys of some chocolates. This is the text. Okay. Once after sending the keys, I want to perform click operation on this one, right? So this is the ID. Okay. We identified this element. Driver dot find element by dot CSS selector. This is the one. Now on this, instead of performing the click, let me perform the send keys. And I don't want to pass any keys. I just want to move it blank. So let me run this program. Just check right. Oh, nothing is performed here. Hasn't performed any click, but not throwing exception also. Let me try to rerun. We will get this kind of exceptions when for text box you are trying to perform any click, or for a click instead of click you are performing any other thing like send keys or something like that. So in that case you will face this kind of exceptions: element not visible, or element not selectable, element not clickable. So these kind of exceptions you will get it there. Okay, just wait, let me check it. Okay, I'll get back to you on this where we get this kind of exception. So whenever you are trying to perform an inappropriate action on a particular web element, then we will get this kind of exception. I'll get back to you on this type of exception. We'll see the next one, session not found exception. So let me rename this one, session not found. Let me rename this file. Okay, here. So what we are doing is, let me quit the driver dot quit. After quitting the driver, we are trying to access that element, driver dot find element by dot. So I'll try to locate the same. I'll try to use the same thing. Unintent, we are not aware that driver got quitted, and we are trying to access this particular driver object again. So then we will get, in this case, we will get session not found exception. Let me run this one. Session not found exception. No such a session exception. Session ID is null. See, in real time, we will have lot of classes, lot of methods. So we don't know which method is using this driver dot quit, and where at what point it is quitting the driver. But in the current method which we are working, so here we might be using this driver object. So in that case, we will face session not found exception. That means it got uh, quitted at some point, but we are not aware of it. But still, we are if we are doing the activities by using this driver object, then we will face this issue. So whenever you come across this kind of things, you need to make sure that you are quitting the driver only at the end of your execution. That thing you have to remember. Okay. So this is about the session not found exception. I'll get back to you on invalid element state. So whenever we do some inappropriate action on a particular, like hidden element, if you are trying to perform the click, that is click element. So hidden element, the element which is disabled, it is not enabled, it is disabled in that for that particular web element. If you are trying to perform any activity, in that case also you will face this kind of exception. I'll get back to you on with an example for that in next session. So till now, if you have any doubts, you can ask. So these are the different exceptions in Selenium. So for normal Java exceptions, if you want, I can give an example for that. Java exceptions. Okay. So first, let us see array index out of bounds exception. For that, let me take like this: int a is equal to array a is equal to 10, 15, 20, 30, 45, like this. Okay, this is my array. So once the array is declared, What I will do, I will write some piece of code in try block and say system.out.println. The last element of my array is a of 5. As I could see 5 elements, then I have access this one. Catch block, what I am doing, index out of bounds exception E and system.out.println E dot get message. Okay. So this is how you can handle it. Or if there is a chance of getting arithmetic exception, you can write it like this. Catch arithmetic exception. You can handle it like this. If you get arithmetic exception, if this piece of code is throwing arithmetic exception, this particular catch block will be caught. Okay, system.out.println e dot get message. Okay, so like this, you can write any number of catch blocks, and final block, you can write it like this. Finally execute this piece of code in finally block. Okay, so now let me save this program and run this one. So index 5 is out of bounds for length 5. That is the message it got printed. And finally, it executed the finally block. Okay. So irrespective of exception, it will be executed. The finally block will be executed. So in this point, the index got bounced and exception is caught. So now let me use it like this. No exception is caught. No, there is no exception. It is printing the last element of array is 30 and still the finally block got executed. Okay. So this is how you can use the try catch blocks in for catching the exception. So the suspected code you need to put in the try block. If there is any exception, you can handle it using the catch blocks like this. Okay. That is how you can work with index out of bounds exception. Now let us see system.out.println. Let me show you if this piece of code will be executed after exception. See, if you are not using try catch block, suppose I'm not using this try catch block, okay, and this piece of code I'm trying to use it without try catch, so the exception will be caught and execution will stop there itself. Suppose if I write it like this, let me copy this one and paste it here. I'm not handling this exception. See, I'm placing it outside the code, outside the try block. I'm not using the try catch. So I'm placing it just like that and I'm commenting here. So now, if you run this program, this piece of code at line number 23 or this line number 12 from line number 10 itself, at the line number 10 itself, the execution will get stopped because it is throwing some exception. So let me run it and show you. See, nothing got executed. At line number 10 itself, it stopped the execution. So that is when you use the same piece of code inside the try block, even though exception is caught, it will not stop the execution. It will continue with the execution. See, after exception also got executed. Okay, that is the use of try catch block. After execution also, it will be executing after the exception also, it will be executing the code. So now let us see for arithmetic exception. Okay, so how we can manually create an exception. So here, what we have done, we have intentionally thrown an exception, right? That is why we are handling it in try catch. Now we will see how we can manually throw an exception, how we can create an exception. Okay, so if age is less than 18, in this place we cannot we cannot write any condition, right? So it will not throw, system will not throw any exception for this one, because age is an integer. We are writing the if condition if age is less than 18. But we want to throw manually. We want to throw manually an exception. So what I will do, throw new arithmetic exception. Okay. And you can display the message here. You can display the message here. Person is not eligible for vote. Okay. So this is what you can throw it there, throw an exception, because this piece of code will system, for this piece of code, system will definitely not throw an exception because everything is fine. This is an integer and we are checking this condition. It is perfect. There is no error. There is no chance for exception. In that case, if you want to throw an exception manually, then you can use this piece of code, throw new any kind of whatever is the type of exception that you want to throw, you can throw, and person is not eligible for vote. Otherwise, just print person is eligible for vote. Okay. Now let me run this program. Person is eligible for vote. Let me give you the age as 10. Now the age is 10 and run this program. So manually we are throwing this exception, arithmetic exception, and the message is person is not eligible for voting. This is how you can manually throw an exception. This is one case where you can manually throw this exception. Okay, and stop your execution. Manually stopping the execution. If the person is less than, if the person is minor, he cannot vote and he cannot continue with the execution. So this is how you can check it. Let me show you one more type of exception here. And I'll take in b is equal to 0. Now double div is equal to age divided by b. Okay. So now system dot out dot println, the result of division is okay. Now let me run this program. Arithmetic exception, the message is divided by 0 exception. So you cannot perform the division except, you cannot perform any division by 0, division with 0. So that is the exception. So these are some Java related exceptions. You can answer these three. So one is the array index out of bounds, arithmetic exceptions. So these things you can say as examples whenever they ask you about Java exceptions and Selenium related exceptions. So clear all of you? Any doubts in this part? Any doubts in this part? Yes, someone was saying something. Gnaneshwar, any doubts? If you have no doubts, we can wind up this call and we'll meet in the next session. We'll continue with how we can read external Excel data. So that is the only thing which is pending in this PPT. So we will complete this task. Okay. How we can read the data from Excel sheet. Okay. Thank you all. We'll meet in the next session.